I collapsed onto my thrift store sofa, groaning as my spine realigned itself from the torture of another endless workday. The boxes around me stared back, still unopened, still waiting for the day I'd find the motivation to finish unpacking. My new place, apartment 9A, was perched high above the city on the 9th floor, but it felt more like a halfway house for forgotten things. A used couch, an old lamp that flickered when it felt like it, and silence so thick it pressed against the windows. Outside, the city murmured with life. Cars whispered below like ghosts passing each other. But inside, it was the kind of quiet that you notice too late. The kind that hides behind comfort. That wraps around you like a blanket until you realize it's not keeping you warm. It's holding you still. That night I was half asleep, the drone of streetlight humming through the blinds when I heard it. Footsteps. Faint, deliberate, right beyond the wall. At first I didn't think much of it. This was a new place, old building. Things creak. But then came the dragging sound. Something heavy being pulled across the floor of apartment 9B. That made me sit up. 9B was supposed to be empty. The landlord had mentioned it in passing, said the last tenant left in a hurry, left the place vacant for months. No new renters, no visitors. But the sound I was hearing wasn't a building settling or pipes clanking. It was footsteps, movement. I pressed my ear to the shared wall and held my breath. Silence. I chuckled nervously, shaking my head. Maybe my brain was just rattled from the move, or work, or both. But when I finally slipped into sleep, it didn't last long. A sound pulled me out of the haze, soft, muffled, heartbreaking, sobbing, right through the wall. It wasn't loud, but it was close. A woman's voice, tangled in whispers and grief. Her words were blurred, swallowed by the plaster between us. But I could feel them, like echoes caught in a dream. There was something else, too. A rhythmic thumping. Soft, steady. As if something was hitting the wall in time with her cries. Thud. 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 My pulse ticked upward. I sat up and glanced at the clock on my phone. 3:33 a.m. Why is it always 3:33? I got out of bed, heart in my throat, and pressed my ear to the wall again. The sobbing had faded, but something about the silence that replaced it felt worse. Heavier. That's when I made the first mistake. I told myself it was just a fluke, a dream maybe. Echoes from another floor. I wanted so badly for that to be true. I wanted it to be anything but what it felt like. Something alive in the silence. Something sad and close and real. I crawled back into bed, but sleep refused to return. I lay there in the dim blue of my room, the wall cold behind me. And just before I drifted off again, I thought I heard it, faint and broken. A lullaby, software slow, played from somewhere just beyond that wall, and then silence. But not the kind that comforts, the kind that listens. I couldn't sleep. Not after what I heard. The muffled sobbing still echoed faintly in my mind, even after the silence had returned. It wasn't the sound itself that disturbed me. It was the intimacy of it. Like someone was right there, just beyond the wall, crying softly into the void, hoping someone, anyone, might hear. And I did. At 3:33 a.m., no one should be crying in an empty apartment. No one should be dragging furniture or thumping against the wall. And yet, something in apartment 9B was alive with sound. I got up, still in my t-shirt and flannel pajama pants, grabbed my phone, and slipped on the house slippers I'd left by the door. My apartment was dark except for the glow of the city sneaking through the window blinds. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't want to wake the building. The hallway outside was colder than I expected. The dim fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, a few flickering as I stepped out. The wallpaper lining the corridor was a sickly shade of green, peeling in places, like it was trying to escape the walls. I turned toward apartment 9B. That's when I saw it. A sliver of light, just a thin line, glowing beneath the door. I froze. I hadn't imagined it then. There was something, or someone, inside. I stood there for a moment listening. No sound, no footsteps, no sobbing. But the air felt different, heavier, like the silence was full of breath. I approached slowly, every step measured, my ears straining for any sound. I was close now, just a few inches from the door. I raised my hand to knock, but before my knuckles could touch the wood, the door creaked open on its own. Just a few inches, enough to see darkness inside, enough to smell something damp, sour, and old. I stared into the gap. My heart pounded. My throat tightened. "Hello?" I whispered. No answer. I hesitated, then pushed the door open a little farther. My fingers found the light switch just inside the wall. The overhead light sputtered and flickered to life. Dust hung in the air like fog. The living room was unfurnished. No chairs, no table, no sign of life. Plastic sheets covered the floor and the windows, stiff with age and grime. The kind used for renovation. Only this place looked untouched for years. I stepped inside. The floorboards creaked under my weight. The air smelled of plaster and something metallic. Something wrong. That's when I saw the scratches. 4 deep gouges in the paint along the far wall. Parallel lines, like claws, cutting through the drywall. They started low, near the floor, and stretched upward, as if something had been dragged or had dragged itself. They led straight to the bedroom door, which was open. I should have turned around. Should have closed the door and walked away. But something kept me there. Not just curiosity. It was as if the apartment itself had drawn me in, as if my presence had been expected. The light above me flickered again. And then it died. Everything went dark. All I could see now was the faint rectangle of hallway light behind me, my only anchor to the outside world. My shadow stretched long into the room, wavering like a living thing. From the bedroom, I heard it. A slow, deliberate creak of floorboards. Something shifted in the dark. My skin broke out in goosebumps. I swallowed hard. "Is anyone here?" My voice cracked. "Do you need help?" No answer. Then behind me, the sound I'll never forget. Slam. The front door crashed shut, the echo ricocheting down the hallway outside. I spun around and grabbed the knob. It wouldn't budge. I was locked in. And somewhere, deep in the apartment, something waited. The silence in 9B was not the kind that comforts. It was the kind that breathes back at you. I stood frozen in the living room, staring at the deep gouges carved into the wall. 4 jagged lines running like claws across old paint and cracked plaster. They led toward the open bedroom door, which gaped like a mouth waiting to swallow. I glanced behind me, toward the front door, still ajar, still lit by the hallway's pale fluorescence, the only thread tying me to normalcy. I should have left right then, but curiosity is cruel. It doesn't whisper, it pulls. I stepped forward. Each creak beneath my feet made the air feel tighter. My phone's flashlight cut through the murk, shaking slightly in my hand. The dust danced in the beam, swirling like it was stirred by something unseen. The bedroom door was half open, its edge scarred with age and moisture. From where I stood, I could just see the tip of an iron bed frame, rusted, skeletal, abandoned. I moved closer. Then, just as I reached the threshold, the living room light, the only real light, fizzled. A hiss, a click, a blink, then nothing. Darkness swarmed around me. The hallway behind me dimmed to a distant memory. My breath caught. My shadow disappeared. All I had left was the trembling cone of my phone's flashlight and the pulse pounding behind my eyes. "Is anyone here?" I managed. Do you need help?" No answer. Just a soft creak. Not mine. From the bedroom. The kind of creak you hear when weight shifts, when someone turns slowly in place. I aimed my light toward the bedroom and stepped inside. The air was thick, musty and cold. The walls were stained and peeling. There were long, finger-like streaks on the wallpaper, like something had been dragged down it. My light caught the bed. Old. Metal. Covered in a thin coat of dust and something darker in the corners I didn't want to identify. And on it, sitting perfectly still, was a music box. Small. Wooden. Painted pink once, but chipped and faded with age. Its tiny ballerina figure stood upright but lifeless, like it had been forgotten mid-performance. My heart was racing, and the room felt wrong, like a stage that had been left behind after the final act. Then the front door slammed shut. Violently. The sound thundered through the apartment, followed by silence so sudden it screamed. I bolted back to the living room, heart in my throat, and grabbed the doorknob. Twisted. Yanked. Nothing. It was stuck. No, locked. I hadn't locked it. It had shut on its own. Something had locked me in. I turned back, breath shallow, and swept the phone light across the room. That's when I saw her. Just for a second. A figure. In the bedroom doorway. A woman in a nightgown, pale and still, like a reflection that hadn't caught up to me yet. Her face was hidden by the shadows, but her outline, her presence, was unmistakable. And then, she was gone. Vanished into the dark like breath on glass. I staggered backward, every nerve in my body screaming to run. But there was nowhere to run to. Just four walls, fading light, and the slow realization that I wasn't alone in 9B. Not anymore. My pulse was thunder in my ears. The air inside 9B pressed in on me, thick and damp, like it had been sealed away for years, like time itself refused to move here. I turned back toward the bedroom. The open doorway loomed like a wound in the apartment's side. My flashlight quivered in my grip, casting long, nervous shadows across the floor. I took a step forward. The room inside was the mirror image of mine, but stripped of life. The wallpaper curled at the edges like old skin. A radiator sat cold and rusted under the window, its paint flaking like ash. In the center of the room stood a lonely iron bed frame, and on it, something small. A music box. I didn't know why it filled me with dread, but it did. Something about it felt too precise, too placed, as though it were waiting for me. I moved closer. The box was old, wooden, pink in a faded, almost bloodless way. The top was open. The tiny ballerina figure inside paused mid-spin, arms lifted in a pose too elegant for this place. I hesitated, then reached out. The moment my fingers brushed the lid, the ballerina twitched, then began to spin. A warped lullaby creaked from its insides, slow, dissonant, like the music was struggling to remember itself. It was the same melody I'd heard through the wall, and then came the sobbing. Software fragile, like someone trying not to cry, trying not to be heard. The light on my phone began to flicker. Once, twice. Then the strobing began. In the first flash, I saw her. Far corner. Just a shape. A woman. Still. In the second flash, she was closer, standing by the dresser. Third flash. The foot of the bed. Each time the light blinked, she was nearer. Never moving. Just appearing. My breath caught. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The next flicker landed on her face. White, bloated, eyes black, smeared with tears that didn't end. Her mouth hung open, jaw crooked, trembling with grief. Her neck slanted sharply to one side, as if it couldn't hold her head upright anymore. She looked broken, and then the music began to slow. The ballerina's spin faltered, winding down, the last few notes of the lullaby playing out like the end of a dream. The light stuttered once more. She was inches from me. I could feel her breath, or the memory of it, grazing my cheek. Her hand began to rise, reaching for me. Then, darkness, complete and smothering. No more music, no more flickers. Just the silence, and the sobbing, rising again, right next to me. The room was silent now. The lullaby had stopped. The ballerina inside the music box had stilled, her final pirouette frozen in place. But the air hadn't changed. It was thicker now, colder. The kind of cold that didn't just touch skin, it sank into bone. I stood paralyzed in the pitch black, my flashlight dead in my hand. I was alone, except I wasn't. The sobbing began again. Only this time, it was no longer distant. It was right beside me, close enough that I could feel the vibration of each trembling breath in the air between us. I didn't move. I couldn't. My ears strained, my eyes useless in the dark. I tried to pinpoint the sound, the exact spot she was in. But it came from everywhere at once, like the walls were crying. Then came the whisper. So faint, it was almost a breath. Help! I jerked backward instinctively, groping in the dark. My foot hit the edge of the bed frame and I stumbled. My hands flailed, brushing cold metal, the headboard, and then a hand closed around my wrist. Not just cold, freezing. The instant it touched me, pain shot through my arm like an electric current of ice. My knees buckled. I screamed. The grip wasn't tight, not forceful. It was mournful. As if she didn't want to hold me, but couldn't let go. I felt my strength draining. My heartbeat slowed. My breath turned to vapor in the cold. I was going numb, starting from that wrist and spreading fast. I fought to pull free, but her grip tightened. My skin burned from the cold. My muscles locked. I could feel her now, all of her broken body inches from mine. Her sorrow wrapped around me like water in a sinking room. I don't know how, but I found my voice. "Let me go!" I screamed, raw and hoarse. With a violent jerk, I tore my arm from her grasp. The cold shot up my side like fire in reverse, and I fell backward, crashing against the bedroom door. The sobbing stopped. Just like that. The air went still, not calm, but hollow, as if something had stepped out of the room, or into it. And then, bang! The front door of 9B flew open. I didn't hesitate. I scrambled to my feet, nearly tripping over the threshold as I threw myself into the hallway's pale light. I didn't look back, couldn't, but I heard it, the faint sound of the music box winding up again behind me, and a single broken sob, echoing down the hall like a goodbye I never asked for. The hallway light hit me like a lifeline. I collapsed backward out of 9B, gasping, clutching my wrist where that freezing hand had grabbed me. My skin was numb and burning all at once. I scrambled away from the threshold like something might come lunging after me, but nothing followed. Just silence, and then, click. The light inside 9B flickered on. I turned my head, heart pounding so hard I felt sick. The apartment looked completely still now. Literature dusty. Empty. No woman, no music box. Just a stained mattress and cold air spilling into the hallway. Doors creaked open along the corridor as neighbors peeked out, their tired faces twisted with concern. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Someone called the landlord. Minutes later, he arrived in a hurry, still in a robe, keys jangling in one hand. "What's going on?" he asked. But then he saw me, slumped against the wall, pale, shivering, barely able to form words. I was in 9B, I whispered. The door opened. I went in. There was something in there. The landlord's face changed. He didn't laugh. He didn't scoff. He just stared at me. Quiet. Ashen. 9B's been empty for months, he said slowly. Since she died. I blinked, my mouth dry. She? He hesitated, then nodded. The last tenant, a ballet dancer. Lived alone. Was found one night. Neck was broken. Just like that. He gestured toward his shoulder, mimicking the unnatural angle I had seen in the dark. She was at the foot of the bed, he continued. They think she fell, but no one knows for sure. I never cleared her stuff. Couldn't bring myself to touch it. The music box, I said. It was on the bed. He looked at me sharply. It was? I saw it. It played. I stopped, shaking my head. She made it play. She was crying. The landlord nodded slowly, like he'd expected this, like he'd heard it before. Come, I said, standing with weak legs. Come see it. It's still there. He followed me in, back into 9B. Now that I was no longer alone, the place felt different. Not safe, but quieter. Still. The air was cold and flat. We walked into the bedroom together. The bed was bare again, but sitting right in the center, coated in a thin film of dust, was the music box, closed, untouched. I reached for it slowly. My hands trembled as I opened the lid. No sound came out, just silence. But inside the lid, a photograph, taped carefully there, yellowed with age. It showed a young woman in a ballet costume, mid-pose, smiling for the camera. She was in this room. I recognized the peeling wallpaper behind her, the iron bed frame. But something else made my skin crawl. Behind her, in the corner of the photo, was a shape. A tall, shadowy blur, as if someone had moved during the shot. As if something had been standing behind her, watching. I felt cold all over again. She wasn't alone, I whispered. The landlord turned away, quietly, and said nothing. And I couldn't stay. I walked out of 9B without another word. The photograph burned into my mind. That night, I left every light on in my apartment. I didn't even try to sleep. But at 3:33 a.m., like clockwork, the lullaby started again, soft and slow, leaking through the wall, and then the sobbing, gentle, mournful. Right on the other side, I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just waited for the dawn to come. I didn't sleep that night, even after escaping 9B, even after the landlord saw it for himself. The photo, the music box, the dust that never settled because the air in that place never rested. I sat on the edge of my bed in 9A, every light in my apartment blazing like a weak promise of safety. I kept glancing at the wall between my bedroom and hers, the one that had felt so thin at 3:33 a.m. Now, I knew it wasn't thin because of cheap construction. It was thin because something wanted to be heard. The photo inside the music box hadn't just shaken me. It had confirmed something. She hadn't been alone. In the image, she was smiling. A moment frozen in time, pure and unsuspecting. But behind her, in the shadows of that bedroom I now knew too well, was a blur. Tall, distorted, watching. A shape that didn't belong. I'd seen it before. Not clearly. Never clearly. But I'd felt it. In the cold. In the dark. In the way the door shut behind me like it had hands. In the sobs that weren't hers alone. Something else had been in there with her. And now, it was still there. The minutes crawled by as I stared at my phone, watching the time tick toward it again. 3:32. 3:33. The moment the screen turned, the lullaby began. Software slow. Familiar. Coming from the other side of the wall. And just like before, the sobbing followed. Low, broken, hopeless. I froze. The tears in that sound weren't theatrical. They were human, real. The sound of someone who never got to say goodbye, someone trapped in the last moment of their life. I didn't move. I couldn't, not even to check the wall again. The music played longer this time, slower, like the box was winding down in slow motion. And then, for the first time, I heard a whisper carried beneath the melody. "He's still here." I don't know if the voice was hers. I don't know if it was meant for me. But the message was clear. This wasn't a haunting. It was a warning. There was something else in apartment 9B. Something beyond grief. Something darker, older, patient. She hadn't died alone, and neither would I, if I stayed. As the first rays of morning bled through the blinds, the music stopped, and the silence that followed felt satisfied. I packed that same day. Didn't even touch the boxes I hadn't unpacked. I left the keys on the kitchen counter, walked out of 9A, and never looked back. But sometimes, even now, I wake up at 3:33 a.m., no matter where I am. And in the silence, I swear I hear it. A faint lullaby, playing just beyond the wall. and a woman's gentle sobs. Still waiting.